you could think of military engagement through this content and through these platforms as like pre-qualification, right? You're feeding Walmart Connect a warmer, more receptive shopper. So, in practice, it actually simplifies the system rather than complicating it.
Chris, welcome back. It's good to see you. Let's start by setting the stage again for our audience. Please introduce yourself and share a little bit about Be Big Communications and explain how you work with Walmart suppliers today.
Yeah, hi. I'm Chris Bodman, head of growth strategy at Be Big Communications. At Be Big, we run the largest digital ecosystem dedicated to military families. We reach millions of military households through mymilitarySavings.com, mymilitarylifestyle.com, our email network, social communities, and then a wide network of on-base and off-base activations. We're unique in that we give brands a single turnkey way to connect with this highly engaged audience across every channel that they shop: commissaries, exchanges, and of course, Walmart. For Walmart suppliers, we translate that engagement into real retail outcomes. Our communities are warm, trusted, and really they're actively looking for product recommendations. And that means that, your marketing spend goes further and delivers a stronger lift. We focus heavily on tying military activation back to Walmart goals, which, incremental households, repeat purchase, category growth, and of course, share of wallet.
When you talk with Walmart suppliers, how do you frame the military community, not just as a cause, but as a real growth opportunity for their business?
Yeah, so, supporting the military from our perspective, it's the right thing to do, but it's also a smart business decision. Um, I always think about, marketers are constantly looking for an angle, right? Like a way to connect with audiences. And military audiences share enough common ground to represent an incremental opportunity to grow sales. When I'm talking with Walmart suppliers, I try to emphasize really three things. So, number one, scale. Um, just to think about how big this audience is, military affiliated audiences represent 34 million Americans. So that's about 10% of the country. So, a good chunk. Consistency. This audience is one that shops often. They spend meaningfully, and they stay loyal to brands that show up authentically, that really make them feel like they're being seen. And then predictability. Military families share unique life stages, right? PCS moves, deployments, homecoming seasons. They have common shopping triggers that create brand switching moments, opportunities for retailers. Walmart already aligns with their priorities of affordability, accessibility, and convenience. So when suppliers can strategically connect with this military community, they're not doing just niche marketing, right? They're unlocking a penetration driver inside of Walmart.
In the context of Walmart, what makes the military affiliated community such a powerful let me start again. In the context of Walmart, what makes the military affiliated community such a powerful lever for incremental sales and household penetration?
So I think three reasons here. So first of all, frequency. Military households make more trips per month than average US households, especially during PCS cycles and life transitions, which they face, on average every 2 years. Second, I think there's some channel overlap. They shop commissaries, of course, but they also shop Walmart, and that creates kind of a natural reinforcement between on-base awareness and off-base conversion. So Walmart suppliers have a particularly strong opportunity here because commissaries don't always offer convenience or selection, right? So while you can't beat the price at the commissary, there's a mandated discount level that they have to achieve. Walmart might be more likely to carry a favored product, right? So you can't take advantage of a commissary discount if the commissary doesn't have the product on the shelf, right? So there's that. And then third, loyalty. Once military families find a brand that they feel like supports them, they tend to stick with it, and they recommend it, right? So you can earn that customer, and keep them coming back, but they're also likely to spread the word of mouth. And with that uh, frequent move, right, with that PCSing and the frequent moving around, you kind of are expanding that word of mouth radius. That gets to nationwide pretty quickly. So when you combine that frequency, loyalty, and the multi-channel exposure, I think you really get a community that can reliably drive new households, repeat trips, and then category expansions.
Many suppliers are investing in broad multicultural or occasion-based marketing. What's different about the military community that makes it uniquely suited to driving penetration and category expansion?
Yeah, this is a great question, I think, because a lot of suppliers already invest in multicultural marketing or seasonal programs, of course, or even big tentpole moments throughout the year, and those are all important. But the military community is a little different, right? It gives you something that these other segments usually don't have, which is a built-in pathway to actual household penetration. So here's why I'm going there. So first of all, military families are constantly going through major life transitions, right? So they move every few years. They're dealing with deployments, homecomings, new schools, new bases, all that stuff. So there's always some kind of change happening. And every one of those moments is a natural point where they, might be resetting routines and are open to trying out new products. And a lot of marketers, actually spend huge dollar amounts trying to manufacture these kinds of moments. And so for the military community, they just are kind of a natural part of everyday life. Second, there's a unique combination of shared identity and broad diversity within the military. So you can speak to these unifying ideas of service, sacrifice, pride, all those sort of military concepts, and it resonates across a group that actually gives you a very wide culturally diverse audience. So you get the efficiency of one message with a reach of many different demographics. Another big difference is the way that information spreads. So military families talk, they share, they recommend to each other, and there's like I said, there's a lot of opportunities for them to be sharing, among multiple different social groups. So if something works for one spouse or one service member, that news can travel fast. So when a brand shows up authentically, and we really like to talk about that authenticity of not just giving that military discount, but making that service member feel seen and respected and appreciated. You get that loyalty and advocacy that you don't see at that scale in other segments. Um, and then there's shopping behavior. We know military families shop on base and off base. They go to the commissary or exchanges, but they also go to Walmarts. And that overlap gives suppliers a really powerful pathway. They can build awareness on base and capture trial and repeat purchase at Walmart. And so it's kind of naturally reinforcing with itself. So, when you put all that together, frequency of life changes, that shared identity, high loyalty, you get this segment that's isn't just good to target, it's actually built for penetration and category growth. It's predictable to a certain degree, it's scalable, and I think it aligns with, Walmart's value promise. So, it makes it really powerful for Walmart.
For supplier teams who may not be thinking about household penetration on a daily basis, how do you define it in plain language, and why is it such a critical growth metric for Walmart?
Yeah. So household penetration, it sounds like a fancy marketing term, but it's really pretty simple. So how many different households are buying your brand, right? Not how often, not how much they're buying, but how many. So the reason Walmart suppliers should care about this is because penetration is the biggest driver of long-term growth. Essentially you can only ask loyal buyers to buy so much, you know, toilet paper, for example. You're not going to buy more toilet paper. It means that you have to bring in new households into the category to continue to grow that category, incremental growth. And that's where that incremental growth comes from. When Walmart talks about growing the category, they're really talking about getting more households, bringing more households into that category. And of course, I have to say this, but the military community is an incredibly efficient way to do exactly that.
How do military households show up in behavior and data? So, trip frequency, basket size, category overlap, in ways that make them especially valuable from a penetration standpoint.
One of the things that we do see a lot in the data is that military households are high frequency shoppers. They're in the store a lot, Walmarts and other stores a lot. So whether it's because of their kids, convenience, new duty stations, pets, or just the pace of military life, they are high frequency. And then they have very diverse baskets from what we've seen. They're shopping across tons of categories, food, beverage, pet, baby, home care, personal care, even healthcare, over the counter, things like that. Um, so when you reach one military household, you're not just getting, one category, you're getting a broad spender who touches multiple aisles many times of frequency. And you know, because they're so open to routine changes, they do show a higher openness to trial. So, we talk about how the high level of loyalty, which is true. Um, you know, they do favor brands that make them feel seen, but they're also open to trying new products within that brand category, and even within a category that they're comfortable with. So they can be incrementally added into categories that they might have previously shopped. Um, that makes them ideal for recruitment programs, and that combination of high frequency, broad category overlap, and then that openness to trial makes them extremely valuable from a penetration and household growth standpoint.
How should suppliers be thinking about military families through the lens of Walmart category roles, traffic drivers, basket builders, profit drivers, and where do you see the biggest opportunities?
For traffic drivers, I think they're already coming to Walmart regularly. So if you can connect with them through military channels, I think you can influence choice before they even walk through the doors,
Hmm.
right? From a basket building standpoint, military families tend to stock up on kids, pets, home goods, snacks, and cleaning supplies. Like we said, they're classic multi-category shoppers. And then from a profit driving standpoint, again, I go back to that trust thing. Once you can build trust with this community, that loyalty tends to stick. So, higher value categories like over the counter, pet food, things like that can really benefit a lot. And I think the biggest opportunity, I really, anywhere where you need to bring in new households or re-engage lapsed ones, I think that's a good place to think about bringing in that military audience.
So let's connect directly to penetration. How can a supplier use the military community to bring new households into their brand or category inside Walmart?
The simplest way is to show up in the places where military families are already spending time, right? Which, trusted channels like ours, mymilitarySavings.com, mymilitarylifestyle.com are both places where the military audience is already coming. And so you can introduce the brand in a way that feels relevant to their lives. Um, and when you show up with real value, either offers or helpful content, or family tips, or even just lifestyle relevant, we always like to come at this from this authentic perspective where our content creators, for example, are all living in the military lifestyle themselves, and so they can really speak to the realities of what these products can mean to the military lifestyle. So you can create that awareness and positive sentiment again before they walk through the doors, right before they get to Walmart. And then you reinforce that with in-store presence or like through Walmart Connect or something like that. And then they're primed to try the product on their next trip.
Are there certain types of products or categories where you've seen military-focused programs successfully recruit new buyers?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely categories that overperform when you bring a military strategy into the mix. And actually, it says a lot about how military families shop. So I think first, anything that solves for convenience tends to do extremely well. So, military households are dealing with long work days, unpredictable schedules sometimes, and then, of course, tons of responsibilities. I mean, they're protecting the country, for goodness sake. So, that's a big deal. So things like ready to eat snacks, beverages, coffee, easy meal starters, things like that. Those categories are perfect for recruiting new buyers, and especially when you're thinking about military families or the spouse that's staying at home while the partner is deployed. They also want that convenience. So if it helps them save time or just makes life a little smoother, that's going to be a win. We also see strong performance in baby and family care. This is a very family oriented audience, right? So, especially with the newer or younger families, and the military skews younger from a family standpoint. So, diapers, wipes, formula, all that kind of stuff. And then household staples that are kind of related to that category, that you buy over and over again. Like we mentioned, toilet paper or paper towels, things like that, laundry detergent. You can bring those households into the brand very easily, and build that loyalty. Another big one, of course, health and wellness. So vitamins, hydration, fitness, nutrition. Again, this is a very health conscious audience, or tends to be, and so any of that kind of product is going to be incredibly health conscious. And in fact, um, we just did some work with Oikos, the Danone protein drink, that just had massive appeal with the military audience, and we blew the metrics out of the water with the campaign that we did. So, that's a perfect example of a product that both gives you convenience and that health conscious aspect, right? And then there's a lot of center store categories that are, routine staples like cereal, condiments, shelf stable meals, pet supplies, things like that, which you may not think are a big deal, but when military families relocate, which like I said earlier, happens on average every 2 years, they have to rebuild all that. They can't take that stuff with them. Anything that's opened packaging, they have to just give away or throw away. So when they get to a new place, they have to restock their whole pantry, right? So that kind of product is also really, really good, uh, for impact for campaigns. So I think any category that hits convenience, family needs, health and wellness, and then that sort of staple category, are going to be really, really great.
So for suppliers in mature categories who feel like they've maxed out, how can the military community provide fresh headroom for growth?
So when a category feels mature, I think you've got two options, right? So one, you can get people to buy more, or you can bring in buyers that you haven't reached yet. So I think military households really fit the bill for that second option. Because of relocations and life changes, like we talked about, I think there's a steady stream of new households entering into any particular ecosystem, right? And in any environment. So those households are forming new routines and new brand loyalties. And so that's where your headroom exists. I think you're not battling for the same buyer. You can look at onboarding new ones.
Military families shop both commissaries and Walmart, as you've said. How should suppliers think about the relationship between on-base purchase and Walmart purchases when the goal is household penetration?
I think it's helpful to think of them as complementary rather than competitive, right? So military families don't choose one or the other; they really shop both. Um, so if you're building awareness, if you invest in awareness or even trial on base, you're not stealing from Walmart share, right? You're actually warming the shopper up. And when they go off base, which, as we've said, they do frequently, it's not like they're locked in there. It's not a prison. They're more likely to pick up that product at Walmart. So on-base engagement can become the first step in a funnel that ends with Walmart penetration. And like I said, a lot of times they might find a product on one base that's in the commissary, and then they go to a different base and it's not stocked at that commissary. I mean, that's a frequent problem. And so they've developed this loyalty to this particular product, and then the only place they can find it when they go to the new place is at the Walmart. So, they can really build off of each other, I think.
What does smart alignment look like between commissary and exchange activations and Walmart initiatives so that what happens on base reinforces demand inside Walmart?
As with any program, it's consistent messaging, consistent across both environments. So maybe they see your offer or content in a military channel first through one of our vehicles. And then they see the in-store display, or an ad through Walmart Connect or something later. But the story, the value, the tone, the creative, the look and feel of it all, lines up, and it feels the same. So, just like with any other marketing situation, you want that consistency and repetition, right? So, thinking of on base as sort of an awareness or affinity stage, and then Walmart as the trial and repeat stage, maybe one way to kind of think about it. And when you can make those two efforts talk to each other, you can get that stronger total impact from synergies or whatever.
How can suppliers design campaigns that move a military shopper from awareness in military channel to trial and repeat inside Walmart?
Yeah, so the key to moving a military shopper from awareness in military channels to trial and repeat inside Walmart, is really about building an intentional journey for them. So the good news is, I think the military community is perfect for this because they're so connected, and they trust the networks that they're a part of. So they respond when brands show up. We've said that before, and that feels relevant in a way that feels relevant to them. So I think starting with authentic awareness is really important in these military first environments that we talked about. So I'll push our vehicles because we know that they're the number one place where military audiences go. My military savings, my military lifestyle. We've got several social channels, and email programs that we run. There's on-base content, as well. That's where you can lead with the value, with a story or a recipe or a tip that speaks directly to that military lifestyle, right? So, in some sense, at this level, you're not selling you're helping. You're kind of from that perspective. Once you have their attention with this, you can layer in practical reasons to try the product or to buy the product. So that could be a digital coupon, right? Or a quick recipe, or even just talking about, the convenience benefits of a particular product, how it can, this Oikos product, how it can enhance your workout, or fuel your recovery. So anything that solves that real pain point for the audience, right? Just again like with any other marketing. So that takes somebody from I like what these people are talking about to I want to try this product. And then then it gets into some more technical media stuff like retargeting those warmed up households, using either our vehicles again or through like Walmart Connect. We can really jump up performance at this stage and really start moving things from awareness to to consideration and trial. So they've already seen us in this military setting. So then when they see you again in a shopping environment, the conversion rate becomes significantly higher. So it's not cold, it's not a cold touch. It's a continuity of what they've already been seeing. And then you can make the path to trial, through direct to Walmart links, curbside coupons, in-store queues, really tying everything together directly with Walmart media options, to make that first purchase easy. And then you want to move past the trial into that repeat performance, right? That repeat purchase. So you want to stay relevant. I think, continuing with the content activities, second wave recipes, follow up emails, seasonal moments, back to school, type situations, content that keeps the product in their routine. And then the ultimate goal for all of this is to move people to that advocacy stage, right? Beyond the repeat purchase, they become brand advocates for you. They do the work for you. And I think, that from a military audience standpoint, that's actually one of this community's superpowers, because they are very connected from a network standpoint. And I think they not only are the people in this audience seeking out that kind of feedback from their fellow, but they're also actively trying to provide that feedback to each other, right? So that gives you a really stronger than a normal word of mouth. It gives you a really strong multiplier effect, that can really drive performance. So that kind of leads you through the classic funnel, so to speak.
From an educational standpoint, what does an all channels on program look like when the primary KPI is household penetration at Walmart?
I think it looks exactly like what all channels on is: a coordinated communication ecosystem. All channels on, for new viewers, is our proprietary integrated marketing program that ties together all these things that we've been talking about into this integrated strategic communications plan. So it brings all of the military touch points together, and allows them to work in synchrony. So you might have, this digital content to introduce the brand, an email to drive higher purchase intent, social media and other kind of community posts to start to generate a conversation. Perhaps even, on-base sampling or experiential events that can help build trial. And then tying in all of the Walmart specific communication options, Walmart Connect, in-store options, curbside coupons, things like that, to really capture that sale. So all channels on helps connect all that stuff together. And when everything's connected, you're not just pushing for impressions, right? You're guiding households into a category that in a way that shows up in real time purchase data.
How do platforms like mymilitarySavings.com and mymilitarylifestyle.com help warm up and pre-qualify military shoppers so Walmart performance improves?
So we've talked about this a little bit, but these are platforms that are trusted spaces where military families they're actively looking for the information that we put out there. So deals, tips, recipes, product ideas. And we're really trying to expand the content quality and the breadth of things that we're talking about on these platforms. And it's not just branded information, it's all sorts of information, mental health and everything else, right? So when a brand shows up on these channels, it is going to automatically come across as helpful rather than intrusive, right? Which is what you're trying to do. So, if someone clicks on a recipe or reads an article or watches a video, or even saves a product offer, they're basically sort of raising their hand as a high intent shopper. And by the time they see you again at Walmart or on the shelf, they already feel like they know the brand. They already know a lot about it, and so that warms up the shopper in a way that really dramatically improves conversion.
For suppliers who worry about adding unnecessary complexity, how do military specific channels complement, not compete with what they're already doing with Walmart Connect?
I totally get that concern, right? There's already enough stuff going on, and I know marketing directors and VPs are harried in the amount that they're dealing with. But I think the key thing to understand here is that military channels don't sit instead of some of these other channels like Walmart Connect. They I think we would slot them in before it, right? So it makes every dollar that you're spending work harder for you. Um, so I think you could think of military engagement through this content and through these platforms as like pre-qualification, right? You're feeding Walmart Connect a warmer, more receptive shopper. So, in practice, it actually simplifies the system rather than complicating it. I think warm leads are always going to perform better than colder ones, right? And so the work that you do leading up to your Walmart Connect program is like seasoning, right, to make that marketing have a greater impact or taste better, I guess, if you want to continue that metaphor.
Yeah, yeah, good stuff. How does engaging the military community translate into stronger selling stories around category growth, incremental household penetration, and share gains when you're talking to a Walmart buyer?
Yeah. I mean, it really gives you it lets you talk about that word that Walmart always wants to hear, incrementality, right?
Hmm,
You can walk in and say, we brought new households into this category, not just our brand.
yeah.
Retailers always want to hear that, right? Um, you can show how the military audience drove new trips, new buyers, or expanded, usage occasions for a product or for a category. And when you demonstrate that, you're not shifting share, but you're growing that whole category. And that's, again, that's something that any retailer, especially Walmart, is going to want to see happen, or that's going to be beneficial for them.
What proof points, narratives, or case study elements should suppliers bring into a line review to demonstrate that a military focused program adds value to the entire category and not just to their brand?
So when you're walking into a Walmart line review, I think you want to show that your military strategy isn't just about generating lift for your SKU. It's about growing that category, like we just said.
Hmm.
And I think, military programs naturally lend themselves to that story because of how this audience shops. So I think, first you could show how you recruited new households, not just, traded them for a different brand. We've already kind of talked about this a little bit, how, military families are responsive to brands that show up for them. So if you can demonstrate that your program brought in buyers who weren't previously in the category, that's going to look good. Second, highlighting multi-channel reinforcement. Um, Walmart loves programs that support the entire ecosystem, digital content that warms shoppers up, on-base exposure, that's going to build up that familiarity, and then the Walmart Connect media that closes that loop. Um, and so when you can show how those layers helped increase category participation, that's going to create a compelling narrative. Um, Third, I think connect your story to basket level impact. Military households over index in trip frequency. We've talked about that, and also multi item baskets, right? So if your military program, if you can show that it resulted in broader basket expansion, more items purchased per trip, for example, you can bring that data front and center for this line review. I think Walmart cares deeply about categories that drive traffic and then build basket size outside of that category. And I think even anecdotal proof points here can help. Even if you don't have hard data, I think you can support it with some of these anecdotal, comments from military shoppers talking about how they tried this for the first time because of because of your program. And that's another area where this social engagement and this community that we've built can help, because we can help supply you with some of that commentary, or even ask those questions to provide those quotables for your review. So, I think when you stitch all of that together, new households, that multi-touch reinforcement, and that broader basket impact, along with that anecdotal work that we can help you with, I think you're telling a really powerful story, that supporting the military does drive incremental growth that lifts the entire aisle. And I think that's exactly what Walmart wants to hear.
How should suppliers be thinking about connecting in-store execution, Walmart Connect, and digital content with their military engagement strategy in order to show up clearly in Walmart metrics?
I think the easiest way to think about this is that that your military strategy shouldn't sit off to the side. It should plug directly into your total Walmart playbook, right?
Hmm.
So, starting with in store, because that's your conversion moment. If military families can recognize your brand from what they've seen on some of our platforms, some of these other channels from exposure in the commissary, even, um, your shelf presence becomes way more powerful and impactful,
Hmm.
right? So, that's where that brand equity turns into a new trip or a purchase. Layering in Walmart Connect after that, you close that loop, right? So you've already warmed the audience up through these channels, and now you can retarget them in the Walmart environment, where purchase intent obviously is higher. And when suppliers can align those elements together, we do see stronger click-through rates, higher conversion, and again, that more efficient spend, that ROI that everybody's looking for.
Mhm.
And then, with the digital and content, which kind of can serve as the glue to hold all that together, military audiences, I think, really need to feel like you understand their reality, right? This is what we talk about with this authentic communication, and not just throwing a discount their way, but really, making them feel understood, so getting underneath things like what a PCS move means, what a deployment means to a family, the tight budgets that that our military families are having to live with, last minute schedule changes, the burden of sometimes being essentially a single parent household for some of these military spouses that are staying at home while their partner is deployed, right? um, Showing that you understand what that lifestyle is like, builds, earns trust with the audience, and so that makes everything you do at Walmart more efficient. That's what really warms up the audience, that kind of level of understanding. So,
Hmm.
The we really try to steer brands away from thinking of military marketing as an extra or a bonus. It's an accelerator, right?
Hmm.
It amplifies what you're already doing, and it helps those efforts land harder with clearly defined high value, shopper segment. So, connecting all that together in an integrated fashion, um, it creates a traceable thread through there that you can track from a metric standpoint, to give you, more penetration, more repeat customer, and then, more share of that category.
So, when the goal is penetration, what KPIs matter most for evaluating success and tying military focused activity back to Walmart performance?
The good news is, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. The KPIs that matter for military programs are the same ones that Walmart already cares about. Like I said this in a previous stuff, that we're working from the same marketing playbook as everybody else. You're just watching them through the lens of this very specific high value audience, right? So, I think, looking at new to brand or new to category buyers, that's the heartbeat of penetration. So if you can show Walmart that this military focused activity brought in buyers who hadn't purchased before, you're immediately proving incrementality.
Mm.
Household penetration rates, especially when you're layering campaigns with us and with Walmart Connect, you can see how many incremental households were added to the brand. And so that's a big credibility booster. Um, uh, Repeat rate, penetration, doesn't really matter without repeat. I mean, it's good, but it's, you want to really get to that repeat purchase. So military families, like we've said, have that loyalty. When you can show that connection to them and can show them that you understand them, they're gonna stick with your product. So I think seeing that strong repeat purchase signals that you didn't only just recruit people, but you are retaining them. Um, so other conversion metrics, like ROAS, you can it really helps kind of tell the efficiency story, and
Mhm.
prove that military uh warming the military audience through our channels makes that those other Walmart Connect dollars work harder. And then basket trip metrics is another one. um if military shoppers are driving bigger baskets and or more frequent trips, that's category growth right there, right? So,
Mhm.
and then I think depending on the category, you also may be able to pull in adjacent lifts. So, things like military shoppers who bought our protein bar also over indexed on hydration beverages, right?
Mhm.
Walmart loves to see that ecosystem impact. And so the connections through our platforms can help you tie those things together into more of that lifestyle experience, not just at the specific product level. So like I said, all of these KPIs are already existing KPIs. Um, so we're not trying to get suppliers to create new measurement frameworks, right? We're just helping them contextualize what those mean and connect the dots between the military engagement that we're helping them with and the specific Walmart outcomes.
How can suppliers practically connect engagement in military channels with sales inside Walmart? And what does a closed loop measurement story look like?
This is a great question. I love this because closed loop can sound super technical, but in reality, it's actually just, pretty straightforward. So,
Mm.
um, I think you look at this in steps. So step one, you want to warm the audience up in a military specific channel. So militarylifestyle.com, recipes, digital coupons, we've talked about all this stuff, so, or even social media, right? But the key is that you're reaching verified military household. And then step two, you can retarget those exact same households inside Walmart Connect. So that's really where the magic happens and where you're really benefiting from the step one. And we've seen enormous efficiency gains by aligning these two things. And then step three, measuring the downstream Walmart impact, the actual sales reporting. You can see exactly how that warmed up audience performed and sort of
Mhm.
track them all the way through. So, the closed loop story, is we reached military households in dedicated channels. We warmed them up with relevant content. We retargeted them through Walmart Connect. They converted at higher rates and added new households to the category, right? So, you know, and the thing is, like, this isn't just theoretical for us. We can back all of that up with data. We can track all of that through. I mean, data data has been an amazing tool for tying all this stuff together in real terms, not just like we think this is how it's going to work, but this is actually how it's worked time and time again, rinse and repeat.
So, beyond initial lift, what should suppliers watch to understand repeat purchase, loyalty, and advocacy among military households?
Repeat and loyalty within the military community, I think, behaves a little bit differently than in the general population. And
Mm.
and I think that's due to the sort of rhythm of military life. So I think, looking at second and third purchase windows, military families often test a product once, especially if it's, part of a discount or recipe, if we've connected them with it through one of our programs. And they quickly decide whether it should become part of their routine. So I think tracking that 30, 60, 90-day window is a pretty crucial thing to make sure that you're, you know, retaining them. And then another one to think of for this particular audience is retention after a PCS move, right? So, like we keep saying, military families move frequently. On average, it's every 2 years. And so, a new base usually means a new Walmart for them. And so if a household continues buying your brand after that relocation, that's a pretty strong signal of loyalty, right? So that's something to look at. And then I think, category stickiness is another good one to consider, right? So it's not just did they buy that product again, but did they stay in that category because of your introduction to it, right? So, maybe they weren't yogurt shoppers before, but now that they've tried the Oikos protein shake, that's part of their weekly basket, and they start looking at other yogurt products in that category because they're just in that area of the store. So that's lasting category growth. I think also looking at response to future promotions. So, if you run another campaign 6 months after the first one and the same households engage again, I think that's a good validation, right, of loyalty for that brand or product. And I think, the the this community has a long memory, and maybe it's part of that sort of shared network thing that's going on there. But again, I can't harp on this enough. When a brand shows up in a real authentic way, especially if they're there for if they're there for the family during like a deployment or back to school, or just the chaos of a PCS move, or even like holidays away from home, away from your other family. I that this is an audience that's going to remember that's going to be emotionally resonant, and it's going to stick with them. And so that memory is going to show up, in that repeat purchase and that ongoing loyalty. And even, I think advocacy, right, for that ultimate goal of the cycle, being that advocate for the brand.
Why is now the right moment for Walmart suppliers to be prioritizing military families, especially as we approach America's 250th anniversary?
I mean, this is a moment of incredibly heightened national pride and reflection. With the 250th coming up, military appreciation, I think, is going to be a very major cultural theme. As we round out 2025 and go into 2026, it's going to just get bigger and bigger. And I think brands that show up now, not just on July 4th, right, on the actual birthday, they're going to be the ones that can lock in that loyalty, be on the leading crest of the wave, not on the end, on the end of it. So I think there's a rapidly closing window here to connect on this front, authentically with a community that is really going to be front and center for the next year at least. And I think the brands that can lean in early, and again, I'll reemphasize authentically, are going to benefit, beyond the anniversary. You don't want to make it sound like you're just getting on the bandwagon because of 250, right? So that, again, that leads back to that authenticity thing.
So for a supplier who hasn't engaged with this community before, what's the right first step, and what should they have prepared before even reaching out?
I mean, we can help you through all of this stuff, but I think getting started is a lot easier than people might think. You don't need a 40-page strategic document or brief or whatever, or a big, groundbreaking creative idea. I think I think you want to start with just clarity on a few simple things so that we can help build that strategy that fits into your Walmart goals. So I think number one, you've got to know your objective in Walmart terms, right? So, be clear on what success looks like for you inside Walmart. Whether that's growing household penetration, driving trial, um, lifting share in a category, unlocking incrementality. Um, again, you don't need perfect answers here, but some kind of direction, some kind of clarity in that is going to be incredibly helpful. When we know what your Walmart objectives are, we can help you reverse engineer exactly how the military audience is going to help you achieve that, right? Number two, understanding who your likely military shopper is, right? So again, you don't need to have like hard data or, super detailed understanding here. We've got that. But it does help to think through, for example, what problem does your product solve for a military family in those military terms? Why are they going to care about it? And then where do you think it fits into their real life
Yeah.
routines? Again, we can help you sharpen the pencil on that. But starting the conversation with some kind of an idea or thought process of that makes the strategy development faster and more targeted. Um, Three, I think bringing to the table your existing Walmart media and shopper plans would be helpful. Again, we don't want to bolt something on to your model here. We want to integrate into it, right? So it's important for us to understand what you're already doing so that we can seamlessly integrate rather than tacking onto it. Um, and then, knowing your internal guardrails, right? So what does your budget look like? I never want to start with the dollar figure, but let's be honest, it's that's an important thing. Timing is also critically important for us to understand. And then what is the approval process going to look like? Those are all guardrails that again, we can figure out as we go, but it's helpful to start with an understanding of what that framework looks like so that we don't waste your time giving you something that's not going to fit into that. If you need to launch something in 2 months and we give you a 6-month plan, well, that's not very helpful, is it? Right. So giving us those guardrails helps us respond back with the right thing. And then I think being open to, category first thinking. One of the unique strengths of the military community is that they, like we said, they can grow an entire category, not just the SKU. So, um, you know, thinking about what role the category plays for the military families instead of your specific product may be a helpful way to approach the communications challenge. So if you're open to that approach, I think we can drive a more significant improvement. And again, the I think the most important one is just get in touch with us, right? Just raise your hand. We're going to do the heavy lifting, right? So you don't need to be a military expert. That's who we are. You don't need perfect messaging. That's what we're going to create for you. You don't need deep insights, right? That's what we are going to uncover. But if you can come with your goals, the key categories, your timing, your budget ranges, there's the basics there. We can help build everything else in a very strategic way. And I always like to say that let's just start with a conversation about what your challenges are, and we can talk through, get to the rest after that.
If you had to leave the Walmart supplier community with one message about the military community and household penetration, what would it be?
I think I'd want Walmart suppliers to walk away with this little nugget. So the military community isn't a side audience, it's a growth engine. Think about it that way. So if you want to bring new households into your brand and your category at Walmart, I think this is an incredibly efficient and impactful place to invest. Once the military audience trusts you, they're gonna stay with you. And I think that's really how categories grow. And I think that's how people should be looking at this audience.
You mentioned before, when you're ready, just raise your hand. What's the very best way for a supplier team to engage with you and with the team at Be Big Communications?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I think the easiest way, go to our website, bebigcommunications.com. That'll give you kind of a basic rundown of all of this stuff too. We've streamlined that to make it super simple. And then right on there, there's a contact us button that leads directly to my calendar. And you can schedule a meeting right there on the calendar. Again, let's start with a conversation, even just 15 minutes where, you can share with me what your challenges are. That's what I want to hear. And then, we'll help you figure out what the right next steps are.
Well, this has been a great conversation. I've learned so much. I know our audience will as well. Chris Bodman, Head of Growth Strategy for Be Big Communications. Thank you so much for your time today, and look forward to talking again soon.